morning. Here we are again. As you will probably notice, my throat's going. Probably won't have any voice pretty soon, so if I skip a day or two, that's why. Until that happens, though, it's time to drive to work, and that means time to talk about a bit more D&D. Today, I want to mix my metaphors a little bit and bring something that's a bit sci-fi into your D&D. For any of you who are Star Trek fans, you'll recognize the term, but for anyone who isn't, it might be a bit new to you. What I'd like to talk about is the Kobayashi Maru. Now, Star Trek fans will know exactly what this is, but I'll explain it for the rest of you. The Kobayashi Maru was a test scenario. It was a test given to captains that was supposed to teach them how to deal with a no-win scenario. Basically, they were given a choice. They could basically either save their crew and not save some people that needed help, or they could save some people that needed help at the cost of quite a bit of their crew. Whichever choice they made, they lost something. There was no way out of it without loss. Now, you'll also know, if you're familiar with Star Trek, that famously Captain Kirk beat the scenario without losing anything by cheating. And that's the kind of thing I want to talk about bringing into D&D. The idea of putting your characters into a scenario that, at the very least, they believe they can't win. Now, I will say personally, I will never actually put my characters into a scenario where there is no way out. There is always a way out. But sometimes I'm not going to make it easy to find. I'm going to make it difficult. I'm going to make it a challenge. And in some cases, it will end up being a lot more of a challenge if they've missed something previously. I'll give you a current example now. The game I'm running, like I said before in the earlier videos, is a quite complicated Spelljammer 5e homebrew matchup. The group have gotten themselves into a scenario where, even though they have been doing heroic things, they've been trying to do good in the world, the way they've gone about doing it, and some of the things that they've done alongside doing it, have ended up meaning that there are a number of authorities looking for them, believing them to be criminals, believing them to be thieves, in some cases being completely right about that. And one of the characters who's actually new to the group, who was not present for most of these events, has ended up approaching one of the groups that's after the rest of the party. And he's basically been told, look, these are the crimes that they're accused of. If you're going to hide them, then we have to assume that, you're part of it. Otherwise, if you want to basically show that you are not complacent in these crimes, then you need to get them to us to stand trial. And the thing is, like I said, the players are actually guilty of the thefts they're being accused of. Without going too deeply into it, because it's a long thing, I'll be honest. longer than this video. They went into a dungeon. They did something that they believe saved the world. They acted in good faith to do that. But while they were in there, they also took a bunch of stuff. They looted the dungeon while they were there. Turns out the stuff belonged to another group of good guys. And, well, when you steal stuff from good guys, they call you a criminal. Funny that. So they're in a position right now where they believe that there's no way out. These guys are coming for them, and these guys will find them because they're a very powerful group. And they're kind of, I think, hoping that they can give the stuff back, go on trial, and talk their way out of it. Which could very well work. I'm not saying that it won't. But from watching and observing my players at this point, I get the impression that they feel like they don't have any other choice. And sometimes it's good to make your players feel that way. It adds a sense of realism and a sense of danger to the game when your player is in a mindset that they think, whatever happens here, we're going to lose something. We can keep the stuff and run away from these guys, and they're going to keep chasing us. And they're going to keep telling other people that we're criminals. And it's going to, ruin our reputation. It's going to affect where we can go and who we can trade with. Or we can turn ourselves over to these guys. Well, for one, at that point, they lose all of the items, all of the artifacts that they collected. Which is a, big loss right there, because some of these items are very powerful. But then there's also the chance that they could be found guilty. And these people that are after them have already been proven to be quite unforgiving of people that they find guilty. So, there's always that chance that it's going to go very wrong. And going back to what I was saying earlier about sometimes something that you don't do earlier, making something harder now, well, that actually comes into this in a few ways. Obviously, they could have decided not to take the items in the first place. That would have prevented this. But beyond that, there are other things they could have done as well. They actually, at one point while they were in the dungeon, had access to a library of information. And they looked up a number of topics, and they got rare books on a number of topics. But one thing they did not think to look up, or did not tell me they wanted to look up, or, never realized that they should look up, was the history of some of the swords that they've stolen. Without going too deep, the swords are part of a set. They've stolen the majority of the set, but not all of the set was there. And knowing more of the history of the blades, specifically the blades that weren't there, would have probably given them a clue about what they need to do here. And it would have given them another course of action rather than turning themselves in. But they didn't do that. They didn't look up the information on the swords they have. They didn't look up the information on... Well, sorry, they used legend lore on the swords they have. So they know about these swords. They know they're part of a set. They know these individual swords' histories. What they didn't do was find out the information on the missing swords. And that's possibly going to come back to bite them. And that's unfortunately sometimes how it is. I always believe that death has to be a very real part of the game. Otherwise, you destroy realism. You know, there is no risk if they know that they're always going to come out of it unscathed. Now, I'm not saying that I intentionally throw death at the players every session. I don't. They sometimes might believe I do, but I don't. But there are major points. There are times when death occurs, and you try to make sure that it's a heroic death, or a memorable death, or a death that accomplishes something. I mean, the dungeon where they stole these items from, where they saved the world, they actually lost 2 members of their party there. One of them they managed to resurrect, the other one they didn't. So, I mean, that's already been part of the game. I'll leave it there at the moment, though. Yeah, the main thing today is the no-win scenario, or at least the illusion of the no-win scenario, and the tension that adds to the game. I highly recommend using it. I highly recommend that when you put a scenario like that in front of your players, it forces them to really confront what's important to them. They have to make a choice, and that choice, whether they realize it or not, will tell you more about their characters than a lot of things will. It will really test their alignment. Now, I don't really strictly track alignment. Alignment shouldn't be a club that you bash someone over the head with and say, well, you're lawful good, you have to do this. But it will sometimes point out if players thinking they're playing one alignment and they're actually doing something else, at which point you can nudge them in the right direction. Anyway, alignment's a topic for another day. I'm nearly where I'm going, so have a great day, and I'll talk to you next time.